Hello, and thank you so much for tuning into Albuquerque High School's production of Spoon River Anthology. Be advised that this show includes reference to extreme circumstances, mature issues, mental illness, tragedy, violence, and death. Spoon River Anthology is dedicated to Connie Adkins as thanks to her perseverance in supporting Albuquerque High and its students even in complicated circumstances. In the event that the stream stops, we will start a new stream through the same channel, and to get there, viewers can go to the homepage of the channel and look for the video that's live. Our online program is in the description of this video. There will be a 10-minute intermission. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Where are Elmer, Herman, Bert, Tom, and Charlie? The weak of the will, the strong of the arm, the clown, the boozer, the fighter, all are sleeping on the hill.
One passed in a fever, one was burned in a mine. One was killed in a brawl, and one died in jail. One fell off of a bridge, toiling for children and wife all are sleeping, sleeping, sleeping on the hill.
Where are Ella, Kate, Mag, Lizzie, and Edith? The tender heart, the simple soul, the loud, the proud, the happy one, all are sleeping on the hill. One died in shameful childbirth, one of a thwarted love, one at the hands of a brute in a brothel, one of broken pride in the search for heart's desire, and one when life in faraway London and Paris was brought to her little space by Ella, Kate, and Mag. All are sleeping, sleeping, sleeping on the hill.
I say to you, life's a gambler, head and shoulders above us all. No mayor alive could close a house, and if you lose, squeal as you will, you'll not get back your money. He makes the percentages harder to conquer, and he stacks the cards to catch your weakness, not to meet your strengths. He gives you 70 years, for if you cannot win in 70, well, you cannot win at all. So if you lose, I say to you, get out of the room. Get out of the room when your time is up. It is mean to sit there and fumble the cards and curse your losses leaden-eyed, whining to try and try.
I was the milliner, talked about, lied about. Mother of Dora, whose strange disappearance was charged to her rearing. My eye quick to beauty saw much besides ribbons and buckles and feathers and leghorns and felts to set off sweet faces and dark hair and gold. One thing I will tell you, and one I will ask. The stealers of husbands wear powder and trinkets and fashionable hats. Wives, wear them yourselves. Hats may make divorces, they also prevent them. Well now, let me ask you. If all the children born here in Spoon River had been reared by the county, somewhere on a farm, and the fathers and mothers had been given their freedom to live and enjoy, change mates if they wished, do you think that Spoon River had been any the worse?
When Reuben Pantier ran away and threw me, I went to Springfield. There I met a lush, whose father just deceased left him a fortune. He married me when drunk, and my life was wretched. A year passed, and one day they found him dead. That made me rich. So I moved on to Chicago. After a time at Tyler Roundtree, villain. Then I moved on to New York. A gray-haired magnate went mad about me, so another fortune. He died one night right in my arms, you know. I saw his purple face for years thereafter. There was almost a scandal, but I moved on, this time to Paris. I was now a woman, insidious, subtle, versed in the world, and rich. My sweet apartment near Champs-Élysées became a center for all sorts of people, musicians, artists, dandies, poets, and nobles, where we'd speak French, German, Italian, and English. Then, I'd wed Count Navigato, native of Genoa. We went to Rome, and he poisoned me. Or so, that's what I believe. Now in the Campo Santo overlooking the sea where young Columbus dreamed new worlds, see what they chiseled. Contessa Navigaro, implora eterna quiete.
I loathed you, Spoon River. I tried to rise above you, and I was ashamed of you. I despised you to the place of my nativity. There in Rome, amongst the artists, speaking Italian, speaking French, I seemed to myself at times to be free of every trace of my origin. I seemed to be reaching the heights of art and to breathe the air that the masters breathed, and to see the world with their eyes. But still, they'd pass my work and say, "What are you driving at, my friend?" Sometimes the face looks like Apollo's, and others it has a trace of Lincoln's. There was no culture, in Spoon River, and I burned with shame and held my peace. And what could I do? All covered over and weighed down with Western soil, except aspire and pray for another birth in the world, with all of Spoon River rooted out of my soul.
My parents thought I'd be as great as Edison or greater, for as a boy I made wondrous balloons, and kites, and toys with clocks, and little engines with tracks to run on, telephones and cans of thread, and played the cornet, painted pictures, and took the part of the villain in the octoroon. By that 21 I married and had to live, and so to live I learned the trade of making watches and getting the jewelry store on the square. Thinking. Not of business, but of the engine. I studied the calculus to build, and all Spoon River watched and waited to see it work, but it never worked. A few kind souls believed my genius was somehow hampered by the store. It wasn't true. The truth was, didn't have the brains.
I belong to the church and to the party of prohibition. And the villagers thought I had died of eating watermelon. In truth, I had cirrhosis of the liver. For every noon, for 30 years, I slipped behind the prescription partition in Trader's drugstore and poured a generous drink from the bottle marked Spiritus Fermenti.
I know that he told that I snared his soul, with the snare which bled him to death. All the men loved him, most of the women pitied him. But suppose you are a lady and have delicate tastes, and love the smell of whiskey and onions, and the rhythm of Wordsworth's ode runs in your ears, while he goes about from morning till night repeating bits of that common thing. Oh, why should the spirit of mortal be proud? And then suppose you are a woman, well endowed, and the only man with whom the law and morality permit you to have the marital relation with is the very man that fills you with disgust. Every time you think of it, while you think of it, every time you see him. That's why I drove him away from home, to live with his dog in a dingy room back of his office.
Well, Emily Sparks, your prayers were not wasted. I owe whatever I was in life to your hope that would not give me up, to your love that still saw me as good. Dear Emily Sparks, let me tell you the story. I passed the effect of my father and mother. The milliner's daughter made me trouble, and I went out into the world, facing every peril known, of love, of woman, and joy of life. One night in the Rue de Rivoli, I was with a black-eyed coquette, and the tears started flooding in. She thought they were amorous tears for thought of her conquest over me. In truth, I was over 3,000 miles away, back in the days when you taught me in Spoon River. And no more could you write me letters, nor love me. Your eternal silence spoke instead. And the black-eyed coquette took the tears for hers, and the deceiving kisses I gave her. But from that hour, I had a new vision. Dear Emily Sparks.
Where is my boy? My boy in what far part of the world? The boy I loved best of all in the school. I, the teacher, the old maid, the virgin heart, who made them all my children. Did I know my boy aright, thinking of him as a spirit aflame, active, ever aspiring? Oh, boy, boy for whom I prayed and prayed in many a watchful hour at night. Do you remember the letter I wrote you of the beautiful love of Christ? And whether you ever took it or not, my boy, wherever you are, work for your soul's sake, that all the clay of you, all the dross of you, may yield to the fire in you. Till the fire is nothing but light, Nothing but light.
I would have been as great as George Eliot, but for an untoward fate. For look at the photograph of me made by Penwood. Chin resting on hand and deep-set eyes. Gray, too, and far-searching. But there was the old problem. Should it be celibacy, matrimony, or unchastity? Then John Slack, the rich druggist, wooed me, luring me with the promise of leisure for my novel. And I married him, giving birth to 8 children, and I had no time to write. It was all over for me, anyway, when I ran the needle through my hand while washing the baby's things and died from lockjaw. An ironical death. Hear me, ambitious souls. Sex is the curse of life.
I was the first fruits of the battle of Missionary Ridge. When I felt the bullet enter my heart, I wish I had stayed at home and gone to jail for stealing the hogs of the Curl Tannery. Rather, 1,000 times the country jail in the land of this marble figure with wings and this granite pedestal bearing the words Prio Patria. What do they mean anyway?
Note, Holmeyer went away to the war day for Curl Tannery. Swore to war and through justice Arnett for stealing hogs. But that's not the reason he turned soldier. Come running with Lucas Arthleton. We quarreled, and I told him never again to cross my path. Then he sold the hogs and went to the war. Back of every soldier is a woman.
The earth keeps some vibration going there in your heart, and that is you. And if the people find you can fiddle, why, fiddle you must, for all your life. What do you see? A harvest of clover or a meadow to walk through to the river? The wind's in the corn. You rub your hands for beeves hereafter ready for market, or else you hear the rustle of skirts like the girls when dancing at Little Grove. To Cooney Potter a pillar of dust, or whirling leaves meant ruinous drought. They looked to me like Redhead Sammy stepping it off to tour lure. How could I till my 40 acres, not to speak of getting more? With a medley of horns, bassoons, and piccolos stirred in my brain by crows and robins, and the creak of a windmill, only these? And I never started to plow in my life, and that someone did not stop in the road and take me away to a dance or a picnic. I ended up with 40 acres. I ended up with a broken fiddle, and a broken laugh, and 1,000 memories, and not a single regret.
Have you seen walking in the village a man with downcast eyes and haggard face? That is my husband, who, by secret cruelty, never to be told, robbed me of my youth and my beauty till at last, wrinkled, with yellowed teeth, and broken pride and shameful humility, I sank into the grave. But what think you gnaws at my husband's heart? The face of what I was? The face of what he made me? These are drawing him to the place where I lie, in death. Therefore, I am avenged.
She took my strength by minutes. She took my life by hours. She drained me like a fevered moon that saps the spinning world. The days went by like shadows. The minutes wheeled like stars. She took pity from my heart and made it into smiles. She was a hunk of sculptor's clay. My secret thoughts were fingers. They flew behind her pensive brow and lined it deep with pain. They set the lips and sagged the cheeks and drooped the eye with sorrow. My soul had entered in the clay, fighting like 7 devils. It was not mine. It was not hers. She held it, but it struggles. Modeled a face she hated to see, and a face I feared to see. I beat the windows, shook the bolts. I hid me in a corner, and then she died and haunted me and hunted me for life.
I was the only child of Francis Harris of Virginia and Thomas Green of Kentucky, of valiant and honorable blood both. To them I owe all that I became, judge, member of Congress, leader in the state. From my mother, I inherited vivacity, fancy, language. From my father, will, judgment, logic. All honor to them for what service I was to the people.
I was a peasant girl from Germany, blue-eyed, rosy, happy and strong. And the first place I worked was at Thomas Green's. On a summer's day when she was away, he stole into the kitchen and took me right in his arms and kissed me on my throat. Then I turned my head. Then neither of us seemed to know what happened, and I cried for what would become of me, and cried as my secret began to show. One day, Mrs. Green said she understood and would make no trouble for me, and, being childless, would adopt it. He had given her a farm to be still, so she hid there and sent out rumors as if it were going to happen to her, and all went well, and the child was born. They were kind to me. Years passed, and later I married Gus Wortman. But at political rallies, when sitters-by thought I was crying at the eloquence of Hamilton Green, that was not it. No, I wanted to say, that's my son. That's my son.
I was sick, but more than that, I was mad at the crooked police and the crooked game of life. So I wrote to the chief of police at Peoria, I am here in my girlhood home in Spoon River, gradually wasting away. But come and take me. I killed the son of the merchant prince in Madame Lou's. And the papers that said he killed himself in his home while cleaning a hunting gun lied like the devil to hush up scandal for the bribe of advertising. In my room, I shot him at Madame Lou's, because he knocked me down when I said that in spite of all the money he had, I'd see my lover that night.
I, born in Weimar, of a mother who was French and a German father, a most learned professor. Orphaned at 14 years, became a dancer known as Russian Sonia all up and down the boulevards of Paris. Mistress betimes of sundry dukes and counts, and later of poor artists and poets. At 40 years, passé, I sought New York, and met old Patrick Hummer on the boat, red-faced and hale, though turned his 60th year, after having sold a shipload of cattle in the German city of Hamburg. He brought me to Spoon River, and we lived here for 20 years. They thought we were married. This oak tree near me is the favorite haunt of blue jays chattering all the day, and why not? For my very dust is laughing for thinking of the humorous thing called life.
When my mustache curled and my hair was black, and I wore tight trousers and a diamond stud, I was an excellent knave of hearts and took many a trick. But when the gray hairs began to appear, lo, a new generation of girls laughed at me, not fearing me, and I had no more exciting adventures, wherein I was all but shot for a heartless devil, but only drabby affairs, wormed over affairs of other days and other men. And time went on until I lived at Mayor's restaurant, partaking of short orders, a gray, untidy, toothless, discarded rural Don Juan. There is a mighty shade here who sings, of one named Beatrice. And I see now that the force that made him great drove me to the dregs of life.
Road slave, selling shoes and gingham, flour and bacon, overalls, clothing, all day long. For 14 hours a day for 313 days, for more than 20 years, saying yes, and yes, sir, and thank you 1,000 times a day, and all for $50 a month, living in this stinking room in the Rattletrap commercial, and compelled to go to Sunday school and listen to the Reverend Abner Peake 104 times a year for more than an hour at a time, because Thomas Rhodes ran the church as well as the store and the bank. So while I was tying my necktie that morning, I suddenly saw myself in the glass, my hair all gray, my face like a sodden pie. So I cursed and cursed. You damned old thing, you cowardly dog, you rotten pauper, you road slave! Till Roger Bogman thought I was having a fight with someone and looked through the transom just in time to see me fall on the floor in a heap from a broken vein in my head.
There is something about death.
Like love itself.
If with someone with whom you have known passion.
And the glow of youthful love.
You also.
After years of life together.
Feel the sinking of the fire.
And thus fade away together. Gradually.
Faintly.
Delicately.
As it were in each other's arms.
As a passing from the familiar room.
That is the power of unison between souls.
Like love itself.
They got me into Sunday school in Spoon River and tried to get me to drop Confucius for Jesus. I could have been no worse off if I had tried to get them to drop Jesus for Confucius. For without any warning, and as if it were a prank and sneaking up behind me, Harry Wiley, the minister's son, caved my ribs into my lungs with a blow of his fist. Now I shall never sleep with my ancestors in Pekin, and no children shall worship at my grave.
How many times during the 20 years I was your leader, friends of Spoon River, did you neglect the convention and caucus and leave the burden unto my hands of guarding and saving the people's cause? Sometimes because you were ill, or your grandmother was ill, or you drank too much and fell asleep. Or else you said, he's our leader. All will be well. He fights for us. We have nothing to do but follow. But oh, how you cursed me when I fell, and cursed me, saying I had betrayed you. And leaving the caucus room for a moment, the people's enemies, they're assembled, watched, and waited for their chance to destroy the sacred rights of the people. You common rabble! I left the caucus to go to the urinal.
Mr. Kessler, was in the army. He drew $6 a pension instead of the corner talking politics, or sat at home reading Grant's memoirs. And I poured my phone by washing, learning secrets of all the people from their curtains, counterpane, shirts, and skirts, the things I knew, rolled at length. People are prospering or falling back, in rent and patches lined with time. No paste or needle can paste decay, and their stains are baffled soap, and their collars are run inside of you, lamps with flowing a dress, handkerchiefs, napery, have secrets. The laundress life knows all about it, and I, who went to all the funerals once over, for I never saw a dead face without thinking it was been washed and ironed.
Well, don't you see this was the way of it? We bought the farm with what he inherited, and his brothers and sisters accused him of poisoning his father's mind against the rest of them. And we never had any peace without treasure. The rain took the cattle, and the crops failed, and lightning struck the granary. So we mortgaged the farm to keep going. He grew nervous and was worried all the time, and some of the neighbors refused to speak to us, taking sides with his brothers and sisters. And I had no place to turn, as one may say to himself at an earlier time in life. No matter, so-and-so is my friend, or I can shake this off with a little trip to Decatur. Then the dreadfulest smells infested the rooms. So I set fire to the beds, and the old witch house went up in a roar of flame, as I danced in the yard with waving arms, and he wept like a freezing steer.
I have studied many times the marble which was chiseled for me. A boat with a furled sail at rest in a harbor. In truth, it pictures not my destination, but my life. For love was offered me, and I shrank from its disillusionment. Sorrow knocked at my door, but I was afraid. Ambition called to me, but I dreaded the chances, yet all the while I hungered for meaning in my life. And now I know that we must lift the sails and catch the winds of destiny wherever they drive the boat. To put meaning in one's life may end in madness, but life without meaning is the torture of restlessness and vague desire. It is a boat longing for the sea and yet afraid.
I was just turned 21, and Henry Phipps, the Sunday school superintendent, made a speech in Bindle's Opera House. The honor of the flag must be upheld, he said, whether it be assailed by a barbarous tribe of Tagalogs or the greatest power in Europe. And we cheered and cheered the speech and the flag that he waved as he spoke. And I went to war in spite of my father, and I followed the flag till I saw it raised by our camp in a rice field near Manila. And all of us cheered and cheered it. But there were flies and poisonous things. There was the deadly water and the cruel heat and the sickening putrid food and the smell of the trench just back of the tents where the soldiers went to empty themselves. There were the horse who followed us, full of syphilis, and beastly acts between ourselves or alone, with bullying, hatred, and degradation among us. Days of loathing and nights of fear, to the hour of a charge to the steaming swamp, following the flag, till I fell with a scream, shot through the guts. Now there's a flag over me in Spoon River. A flag. A flag.
I was only 8 years old, and before I knew what I meant, I had no words for it, except I was scared, and I told Mother, and Father would have killed Charlie, who was a big boy, 15 years old, except for his mother. Nevertheless, the story clung to me, but the man who married me, a widower of 35, was new to Spoon River and had not heard it until 2 years after we were married. Then he considered himself cheated, and the village agreed with him that I was not really a virgin. Well, he deserted me, and I died that following winter.
He ran away and was gone for a year. And when he came back, he told me the silly story of being kidnapped by pirates on Lake Michigan, kept in chains so he could not write me. I pretended to believe it, though I knew very well what he was doing, that he had met the milliner, Mrs. Williams, when she came into the city to buy goods, she said. But a promise is a promise, and marriage is marriage. And out of respect for my own character, I refused to be drawn into divorce by the scheme of a husband who had merely grown tired of his marital vow and duty.
If you in the village think that my work was a good one, who stopped all playing at the cards and hailed old Daisy Fraser before Justice Arnett, and many crusaded the purge of the people of sin, why do you let the milliner's daughter Dora and the worthless son of Benjamin Van Tierney make my grave their unholy pillow?
I wrote him a letter asking him for old time's sake to discharge my sick boy in the army, but maybe he couldn't read it. Then I went to town and had James Garber, who wrote beautifully, write him a letter, but maybe that got lost in the mails. So I traveled all the way to Washington. I was more than an hour finding the White House, and when I finally found it, they turned me away, hiding their smiles. So then I thought, oh well, he ain't the same as when I boarded him and when he and my husband would work together. And all of us would call him Abe there in Menard. As a last attempt, I turned to a guard and said, can you please tell him it's old Aunt Hannah Armstrong from Illinois come to see him about her sick boy in the army? Can't remember my name sometimes. Yes, thank you. And just like that, he let me in. And when he saw me, he broke in a laugh and he dropped his business as president. And he wrote in his own hand Doug's discharge, talking wild of the early days and telling stories.
At first, you will not know what they mean, and you may never know, and we may never tell you. These sudden flashes in your soul, like lambent lightning on snowy clouds at midnight when the moon is full. They come in solitude, or perhaps you sit with a friend, and all at once a silence falls on speech, and his eyes, without a flicker, glow at you. You two have seen the secret together. He sees it in you and you in him, And there you sit, thrilling lest the mystery stand before you and strike you dead with a splendor like the sun's. Be brave. All souls who have such visions as your body's alive as mine is dead. You're catching a little whiff of the ether reserved for God himself.
There will now be a 10-minute intermission.
At 4 o'clock in late October, I sat alone in the country schoolhouse, back from the road amid stricken fields, and an eddy of wind blew leaves on the pane and crooned in the flue of the cannon stove. In an idle mood, I was running the planchette. All at once, my wrist grew limp. My hand moved rapidly over the board till the name of Charles Guiteau was spelled, who threatened to materialize before me. I rose and fled from the room bareheaded, afraid of my gift. And after that, the spirits swarmed. Chaucer, Caesar, Poe and Marlowe, Cleopatra and Mrs. Surratt. Everywhere I went, mere trifling twaddle, Spoon River agreed. You talk nonsense to children, don't you? And suppose I see what you never saw, and never heard of, and had no word for. I must talk nonsense when you ask me what it is I see.
Almost the shell of a woman after the surgeon's knife, and almost a year to creep back into strength, till the dawn of our wedding decennial found me my seeming self again. We walked the forest together, by a path of soundless moss and turf, but I could not look in your eyes, and you could not look in mine, for such sorrow was ours, the beginning of gray in your hair, and I but a shell of myself. And what did we talk of? Sky and water, anything most to hide our thoughts, and then your gift of wild roses, set on the table to grace our dinner. Poor heart, how bravely you struggled to imagine and live a remembered rapture. Then my spirit drooped as the night came on, and you left me alone in my room for a while, as you did when I was a bride. Poor heart. And I looked in the mirror, and something said, one should be all dead when one is half dead, nor ever mock life, nor ever cheat love. And I did it looking there in the mirror. Dear, have you ever understood?
I wanted to go away to college, but rich Aunt Persis wouldn't help me. So I made gardens and raked the lawns and bought John Alden's books with my earnings. I wanted to marry Delia Prickett, but how could I do it with what I earned? And there sat Aunt Persis in her wheelchair, more than 70, half dead. Her throat was so paralyzed when she ate the soup ran out her mouth like a duck. A gourmand yet, investing her income in mortgages, fretting all her time over her notes and rents and papers. That day, I was sawing wood for her and reading Prideaux in between. I went inside for a drink of water, and there sat Aunt Persis, asleep, with Prideaux on the table, a bottle of chloroform on the book. She used that sometimes for an aching tooth. So, I poured the chloroform onto a handkerchief and held it to her nose till she died. And the coroner said she had died of heart failure. Delia, you and Prideaux steadied my hand. I got the money and married Delia. A joke on you, Spoon River.
Reverend Wiley advised me not to divorce him for the sake of the children, and Judge Somers advised him the same. So, we stuck to the end of the path. But you see, 2 of the children thought he was right, and 2 of the children thought I was right. The 2 who sided with him would blame me, and the 2 who sided with me would blame him. And they'd all grieve for the one they sided with. All of them torn with the guilt of judging and tortured in soul because they could not admire equally him and me. Now, every gardener knows that plants grown in cellars or under stones are twisted and yellow and weak, and no mother would let her baby suck diseased milk from her breast. Yet, preachers and judges advise the raising of souls where there is no sunlight but only twilight, no warmth but only dampness and cold. Preachers and judges.
Ye young debaters over the doctrine of the soul's immortality, I who lie here was the village atheist, talkative, contentious, versed in the arguments of the infidels. But through a long sickness, coughing myself to death, I read the Upanishads and the poetry of Jesus, and they lighted a torch of hope and intuition that the shadow guiding me swiftly through the caverns of darkness could not extinguish. Listen to me, ye who live in the senses and think through the senses only. Immortality is not a gift, immortality is an achievement, and only those who strive mightily shall possess it.
Your red blossoms amid green leaves are drooping, beautiful geranium. But you do not ask for water. You cannot speak. You do not need to speak. Everyone knows that you are dying of thirst, yet they do not bring water. They pass on, saying, the geranium wants water, and I, who had happiness to share, and longed to share your happiness, I who loved you, Spoon River, and craved your love, withered before your eyes, Spoon River. Thirsting, thirsting, voiceless from chasteness of soul to ask you for love, you who knew and saw me perish before you. Like this geranium, which someone has planted over me and left to die.
With our hearts like shooting suns, how we walked, it doesn't before the April fields of starlight, looking over the viewless gauze, the darkness. Under your cliff, a tri-asking place in the wood, where the brook turns. How to pass and win, like notes to run together into winning, the absurd improvisation of love. But to put back, as our canticle ended, the rap enchantment of the flesh, which our souls swooned down, down, where time was not, nor space, nor self, annihilated in love, to leave you behind with lamp, and to stand with us to mock yourself, hiding yourself amid flowers and mandolins, seize out between salad and coffee, and to see him tremble. And feel myself a president of some signs of bond, with no fighting together in prejudice heat, with those hands over his bow, and then, oh night, deliberate, unlovely, with all wooing, bottled up with the winning, the started imposition of love, fearless starlight, waiting to be drawn to creation stream, gaze, but failing seeing Francis sometimes as a past. For I and the little brother know clearly face to face. Through circle of brother out the run, you may know Jesus for all, you may feel cold rain fall, but only earth's fear, only heaven, no secret of the seas. In the natural chamber, found me stream again, give me another trial, save me, Shelley.
I was among multitudes of children dancing at the foot of a mountain. A breeze blew out of the east and swept them as leaves, driving some up the slopes. All was changed. Here were flying lights and mystic moons and dream music. Then a cloud fell upon us, and when it lifted, all was changed. I was now amid multitudes who were wrangling. Then a figure in shimmering gold, and one with a trumpet, and one with a scepter stood before me. They mocked me and danced a rigadoon and vanished. All was changed again. Out of a bower of poppies, a woman bared her breast and lifted her open mouth to mine, and I kissed her. The taste of her lips was like salt. She left blood on my lips. I fell, exhausted. Then I arose and ascended higher, but a mist as from an iceberg clouded my steps. I was cold and in pain, and then the sun streamed on me again, and I saw the mist below me, hiding all below them. And I, bent over my staff, knew myself silhouetted against the snow. And above me was the soundless air, pierced by a cone of ice, over which hung a solitary star. A shudder of ecstasy, a shudder of fear ran through me. But I cannot return to the slopes. Nay, I wish not to return, for the spent waves of the symphony of freedom lapped the ethereal cliffs about me. Therefore, I climbed to the pinnacle. I flung away my staff. I touched that star with my outstretched hand, and I vanished utterly. For the mountain delivers to infinite truth, whoever touches the star.
Henry got me with child, knowing full well that I could not bring forth life without losing my own. Therefore in my youth I had entered the portals of dust. Traveler, it is believed in the village where I lived that Henry left me with a husband's love. Well, I can proclaim from the dust, he slew me to gratify his hatred.
My wife lost her health until she dwindled into a scarce 70 pounds. Then the women whom the men styled Cleopatra came along, married ones. All broke our vows, myself among the rest. And years passed one by one, death claimed them all in some hideous form. I was borne along by dreams of God's particular grace for me. And I began to write reams on reams of the second coming of Christ. And Christ came to me and said, "Go to the church and stand before the congregation and confess your sin." But as I stood up and began to speak, I saw my little girl who was sitting in the front seat. My little girl who was born blind. After that, all is blackness.
We stand about this place, we the memories, and shade our eyes because we dread to read. June 17th, 1884, aged 21 years and 3 days, and all things are changed. And we the memories, stand here for ourselves alone, for no eye marks us or would know why we are here. Your husband is dead, your sister lives far away, your father is bent with age. He has forgotten you. He scarcely leaves the house anymore. No one remembers your exquisite face, your lyric voice, how you sang even on the morning you were stricken with piercing sweetness and thrilling sorrow, before the advent of the child which died with you. It is all forgotten, save by us, the memories, who are forgotten by the world. All is changed, save the river and the hill, even they are changed. Only the burning sun and the quiet stars are the same. And we the memories, stand here in awe, our eyes closed with the weariness of tears, in immeasurable weariness.
Here I lie, close to the grave of old Bill Pearsall, who grew rich trading with the Indians, and who afterwards took the bankrupt law and emerged from it richer than ever. Beholding how old Bill and others grew in wealth, I robbed a traveler one night near Proctor's Grove, killing him unwittingly while doing so, for which I was tried and hanged. That was my way of going into bankruptcy. Now we who took the bankrupt law in our respective ways sleep peacefully side by side.
Nothing in life is alien to you. I was a penniless girl from Summum who stepped off the morning train in Spoon River. All of the houses stood before me with closed doors and drawn shades. I was barred out. I had no place or part in any of them, and I walked past the old McNeely mansion, a castle of stone mid walks and gardens, with workmen about the place on guard, the county and state upholding it for its lord the owner, for it full of pride. I was so hungry I had a vision. I saw a giant pair of scissors dip from the sky like the beam of a dredge and cut the house in two like a curtain. But at the commercial, I saw a man who winked at me as I asked for work. It was Walsh McNeely's son. He proved the link in the chain of title to half my ownership of the mansion through a breach of promise suit. The scissors. So, you see, the house from the day that I was born was only waiting for me.
It was moonlight, and the earth sparkled with new fallen frost. It was midnight, and not a soul abroad. Out of the chimney of the courthouse, a greyhound of smoke leapt and chased the northwest wind. I carried a ladder to the landing of the stairs and leaned it against the roof of the portico. I crawled under the ceiling and amid the rafters, and flung among the seasoned timbers a lighted handful of oil-soaked waste. Then I came down and slunk away. In a little while, the fire bell rang, clang, 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 and the Spoon River Ladder Company came with a dozen buckets and began to pour water on the glorious bonfire, growing hotter, higher, and brighter, until the walls fell in and the limestone columns where Lincoln stood crashed like trees when the woodman fells them. When I came back from Joliet, there was a new courthouse with a dome, for I was punished, like all who destroy the past for the sake of the future.
Over and over, they used to ask me, while buying the wine or the beer, Peoria first, later in Chicago, Denver, Frisco, New York, wherever I lived. How I happened to lead the life, and what was the start of it? Well, I told them. A silk dress and a promise of marriage for a rich man. It was Lucius Atherton. That was not really it at all. Suppose a boy steals an apple from a tray at the grocery store, and they all begin to call him a thief. The editor, minister, judge, and all the people. A thief, a thief, a thief, wherever he goes, and he can't get work, and he can't get bread without stealing it. Why? The boy will steal. It's the way the people regard the theft of the apple that makes the boy what he is.
Did you ever hear of Editor Wedded giving to the public treasury any of the money he received for supporting candidates for office? Or for writing up the canning factory to get people to invest? Or for suppressing the facts about the bank when it was rotten and ready to break? Did you ever hear of the circuit judge helping anyone except the Q Railroad or the bankers? Or did Reverend Pete or Reverend Sibley give any part of their salary earned by keeping still or speaking out as leaders wish them to do to the building of the waterworks? But I, Daisy Fraser, who always passed through the street through rows of nods and smiles and calls and words such as "there she goes," was never taken before Justice Arnott without contributing $10 and cost to the school fund of Spoon River.
You'd not believe me, would you, that I came from good Welsh stock? That I was purer blooded than the white trash here and more direct lineage than the New Englanders and Virginians of Spoon River? You'd not believe that I'd been to school and read some books? You saw me only as a run-down man with matted hair and a beard and ragged clothes. Sometimes a man's life turns into cancer, from being bruised and continually bruised, and he turns into a purplish mass, like growths on stalks of corn. Here was I, a carpenter, mired in a bog of life, into which I walked, thinking it was a meadow, with a slattern for a wife, and poor Minerva, my daughter, whom you tormented and drove to death. So I crept like a snail through the days of my life. No longer you hear my hollow footsteps resounding on the sidewalk, going to the grocery store for a little cornmeal and a nickel's worth of bacon.
I am Minerva, the village poetess, hooted at, jeered at by the yahoos of the street for my heavy body, crook eye, and rolling walk, and all the more when Butch Weldy captured me after a brutal hunt. He left me to my fate with Dr. Myers, and I sank into death, growing numb from the feet up, like one stepping deeper and deeper into a stream of ice. Will someone go to the village newspaper and gather into a book the verses I wrote? I thirsted so for love. I hungered so for life.
No other man, unless it was Doc Hill, did more for the people in this town than I. And all the weak, the halt, the improvident, and those who could not pay flocked to me. I was good-hearted, easy Dr. Myers. I was healthy, happy, and comfortable fortune, blessed with a congenial mate, my children raised, all wedded, doing well in the world. And then one night, Minerva, the poetess, came to me in her trouble, crying. I tried to help her out. She died. They indicated me. The newspapers disgraced me. My wife perished of a broken heart, and pneumonia finished me.
He protested all his life long that he was not at fault for Minerva's fall, but only tried to help her. Poor soul, so sunk in sin he could not see that even trying to help her, as he called it, he had broken the law, human and divine. Passers-by, an ancient admonition to you: if your ways be ways of pleasantness and all your pathways peace, love God and keep his commandments.
The secret of the stars? Gravitation. The secret of the earth? Layers of rock. The secret of the soil? To receive seed. The secret of the seed? The germ. The secret of man? The sower. The secret of woman, the soil. My secret, under a mound that you shall never find.
Not character, not fortitude, not fortune, not patience were mine, the which the village thought I had, in bearing with my wife, while preaching on, doing the work God chose for me. I loathed her. I loathed her as a termagant, as a wanton. I knew of her adulteries, every one. But even so, if I divorced the woman, I must forsake the ministry. Therefore, to do God's work and have it crop, I bore with her. So I lied to myself. I lied to Spoon River. Yet, I tried lecturing, ran for legislature, canvassed for books with just the thought in mind. If I make money thus, I will divorce her.
I leaned against the mantel, sick, thinking of my failure, looking into the absent, weak from the noonday heat. Church bells sound mournfully from far away. I heard the cry of a baby and the coughing of John Yarnell, bedridden, feverish, dying. The violent voice of my wife, "Watch out, the potatoes are burning." I smelled them. It was an irresistible disgust. I pulled the trigger. Blackness, light, unspeakable regret. Fumbling for the words again. Too late. Thus I came here. With lungs for breathing, one cannot breathe here with lungs. Though one must breathe, of what use is it to rid oneself of the world if no one's soul may ever escape the eternal destiny of life?
From Brindle's Opera House to Broadway is a great step. I tried to get my ambition fired. With 60 years of age, seeing each scene play in the village, Bella farmed coming. Romantic actor enthralled my soul. True, I said back home, a broken failure. When we lost good in New York, leaving the lone city. But life welcome also. And this place of silence, there are no kindness for it. I wish to say, you could stand amid these pathos of these quiet fields and read these words.
My name used to be in the papers daily, as having dined somewhere, or traveled somewhere, or rented a house in Paris where I entertained the nobility. I was forever eating or traveling or taking the cure at Baden-Baden. Now I'm here to do honor to Spoon River, here beside the family whence I sprang. No one cares now where I dined or lived or whom I entertained, or how often I took the cure at Baden-Baden.
Out of the cell into this darkened space. The end at 25. My tongue cannot speak what stirred within me, and the village thought me a fool. Yet, from the beginning, there was a high and urgent purpose in my soul, which drove me on trying to memorize the Encyclopedia Britannica.
If the excursion train to Peoria had just been wrecked, I might have escaped with my life. Certainly I should have escaped this place, but as it was burned as well, they mistook me for John Allen, who was sent to the Hebrew cemetery at Chicago. And John for me. So I lie here. You know, it was bad enough to run a clothing store in this town, but to be buried here? Ugh.
I went to the dances at Chandlerville and played Snap Out at Winchester. One time we changed partners, driving home in the moonlight of middle June. And then I found Davis. We were married and had 12 children, 8 of whom we lost. Ere I had reached the age of 60, I spun, I wove, I kept the house, I nursed the sick. And by holiday, we rambled over the fields where sang the larks. gathering many a shell and many a flower and medicinal weed, shouting to the wooded hills, singing to the green valleys. At 96, I had lived enough, that is all, and passed to a sweet repose. What is this I hear of sorrow and weariness, anger and discontent? Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life.
Seeds in a dry pod, tick, 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 like mites in a quarrel. Faint iambics that the full breeze wakens, and the pine tree makes a symphony thereof. Triolets, rondels, rondeaus, ballads by the same score with the same old thought. The snows and roses of yesterday are vanished, and what is love but a rose that fades? Life all around me here in the village. Tragedy, comedy, valor, and truth, courage, constancy, heroism, and failure, all in the loom. And oh, what patterns! Woodlands, meadows, streams, and rivers, blind to all of it all my life long. Triolets, villanelles, rondels, rondeaus, seeds in a dry pod, tick, 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 tick. What little iambics, while Homer and Whitman roared in the pines?
Out of me, unworthy and unknown, the vibrations of deathless music. With malice towards none, with charity for all. Out of me, the forgiveness of millions towards millions, and the beneficent face of a nation shining with justice and truth. I am Anne Rutledge, who sleep beneath these weeds, beloved in life of Abraham Lincoln, wedded to him, not through union, but through separation. Bloom forever, O Republic, from the dust of my bosom.
I am not beloved of the villagers, but all because I spoke my mind, and met those who transgressed against me with plain remonstrance, hiding nor nurturing, nor secret griefs nor grudges. It is the act of the Spartan boy that is greatly praised, who hid the wolf under his cloak and let it devour him uncomplainingly. It is braver, I think, to snatch the wolf forth and fight him openly, even in the streets, amidst the dust and howls of pain. The tongue may be an unruly member, but silence is what poisons the soul. Berate me who will, I am content.
Thank you so much for viewing. And now, curtain call.